she doesn't know she's in the video.
Okay.
I'm just gonna watch my.
Hello,
I can't
everyone.
see anything on the Instagram, so whatever.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Second Renaissance Live panel discussion. I am here with two wonderful artists that we're going to be speaking with today about what it means to work in creative writing, and also about what their experiences are going through the education process for creative writing. So our first guest is Jada. She is a creative writing master's student at Wilkes University. She's earned her BA in creative writing at Fairleigh Dickinson University. Jada states that, quote, "I have always been a writer, and I have always known somewhere down the road it would be the biggest aspect of my life." Jada describes her writing as a passion and a potential future. Thank you so much for joining us, Jada. And our other guest is Sarah.
Hey. What's up, everybody?
No, that's it. No introduction. Okay, actual professional introduction. Sarah Vivica is currently getting her master's in creative writing at Monmouth University, where she is working in specializing in nonfiction writing. She received her bachelor's at Fairleigh Dickinson University. Her writing style is often known as, quote, very soft and welcoming while discussing emotions and trauma. And Sarah is currently working on her thesis discussing the processing of grief. Thank you both for joining us.
That was beautiful, by the way. Thank you.
So first off, welcome. So I guess where we should likely start would be tell us a bit about yourselves. We'll start with Jada.
That's such a general question. A little bit about myself. Obviously, I am currently at Wilkes as a master's student. I work under. I'm basically originally started off as a poetry foundation student in screenwriting. Of course, screenwriting was always my goal, so I am currently in the screenwriting department. I work under Rice Clavin, Susan Carsonis, who's a producer. She works with us a lot too. So that's currently what I'm doing right now. So planning to do a short film for my birthday. I'm doing a poetry reading next Saturday in Union. It's on my Instagram, so if nobody follows me, please follow me. That's where I drop all my stuff for when I go to poetry stuff. But yeah, that's like a basic little blurb. Me and Sarah met back at FTU. She was like the transfer student, and I was just like the knucklehead student that never did work on time. So that's how we met. And yeah, here we are many years later, both getting our masters at separate schools in different genres, but definitely all over the place when it comes to writing. I do like everything.
That's very nice. Sarah, cool. Follow that up.
Yeah, that's hard. Right now I'm preparing to start my manuscript in the fall, which will be a compilation of short personal essays, hopefully growing into a larger nonfiction memoir. So I'm super excited about that. Like Jada said, we met at FDU where I was a poetry major. So I really have changed course over the last 5 years. 5 years, that's crazy. Yeah, so I've been doing that, and I've been reading a lot of cool books over the summer, and a lot of translations and international books, sort of just preparing myself for the thesis. Yeah, that's what I'm doing right now. What are you doing right now, Sam?
Not best.
You're doing your best. Same. We're all doing our best. Just trying to live.
Wait, do I have to am I participating in this panel?
I mean, you can participate in the panel if you like.
Okay. Hello, my name is Sam Rubenstein. I am a poet and comedy writer. I am currently working on a small film project called Baseballers, where I am part of the creative writing team. I am also working on a play based on a series of poems called The Space Between. And I am going to be attending the Arts and Authors Extravaganza in Cherry Hill on August 22nd. If you would like to watch me talk about writing, come to that. And that's everything that I'm up to. I don't have a master's in creative writing, but I teach it, so it's okay, I guess.
Any of us have it yet.
Cool.
Not yet.
Yet. So that's a little bit about me. So I guess we've got two poets who also I did not know, Jada, that you also do screenwriting.
Yeah, I was the only screenwriting major at FDU. Like FDU had never seen it before, and David Grant was just so annoyed with me. He was just like, do whatever. He was like, as long as you're not in my class. I'm like, okay.
Oh my god.
I'm kidding. But yeah.
So I guess where we're gonna start, so we have a series of questions. We're open to any questions if someone would like to ask in the audience. Sam Brandt says, hello, hi friends, and would like it to be known that
from the other room. She's in the other room.
So I guess my first question that I'm going to start with is, so Sarah, you talked about, what you're reading. Who's everyone currently reading right now?
Hold on. I'm prepared. I'm actually prepared for this.
I'm glad one of us is.
I feel like as a poet, I have what's it called? The poetsfoundation.org where you can sign up and subscribe to get a poem a day. So that's my daily reading. That's articulated. And then because I'm a screenwriter, I tend to allow myself to be more of the lazier writer because most of the screenwriting is about visualizing the long run of what your script's going to look like and understanding, trying to cut down on the fluff that could possibly be cut, because unlike other genres, a script gets sold to HBO can say, I don't want this or this in these 3 scenes. Now you have to redo it, and then the director comes and says, I want this and this added into it. So you have multiple versions that come up, but the finished product is always what you marvel at in the written. So I do more visual and then written. So that's kind of where I'm at, is watching a lot of 70s.
I was about to ask, what are you watching?
A lot of 70s vampire movies because I'm writing a vampire story based off of a song called Vampire Blues. One of my classmates was like, I think you'd like this. And I was listening. I was like, I think I'm going to make my thesis about this. So I'm working on getting a 70s vibe, which is hard because obviously the 70s is very, very drastically different from where we're at now. I feel like we're trying to vet out a lot of that 70s and 80s energy with cancel culture. So trying to find a place where you can really bring it back to really authenticate the time periods where I'm at with my reading and writing for my stuff.
Interesting.
Cool. That's awesome. Sarah, what are you reading?
Well, right now I'm going to show the book, what I got.
Oh, she's more
It's called... I'm actually prepared. It's called They Will Drown in Their Mother's Tears. It's actually a Swedish book translated into English. And it's awesome. And it's I'm not a political writer. I'm not really a political reader, but this is a very political book based on the Muslims and the Swedish in Sweden. But it's all about time traveling, and the reason why I'm really reading this book is for a class I was taking, and which kind of touches base on the reliability of the narrator and like, is this narrator reliable? And like, I'm currently writing an essay about this book. I'm like, is the narrator reliable? I'm like, I don't know. I mean, I was along for the ride. I thought it was awesome because I'm pretty much done with the book. But I highly recommend it. And it was something I would never have picked up on my own. But it kind of changed the way I look at main characters and how I would, if I was going to write fiction, I would want it to be sort of like this puzzle where you're not sure where you're at. And then figure out the end and you're like, wait, what? Like at the end of the book, I was like, I had to like sit there for like 5 minutes and be like, wait a minute, what? Did I just read all this? And this is what who the main character was the whole time. And that's the kind of writing I think that I'd like to be doing eventually. But yeah, that's what I'm reading right now. And I'm preparing to read on memoir or The Art of Memoir by, hold on. I can't remember who it's called. Mary Carr, sorry. So I'm going to be reading that coming up in September when I start my thesis. But yeah, that's what I'm reading right now. And then I'm going to drastically go back to nonfiction and look at like just craft books and things.
Okay. I'm reading Anxious People by Frederick Backman. I've been reading it all summer. It's very nice. It's a casual read. I recommend. There's no narrator or reliability in it. It goes from many different perspectives and has a very nonlinear story, and that is why I like it. Especially because the book starts with the statement, this book makes no sense and people are idiots. And I'm all about that. Anything that starts with that makes me happy. As for other things I'm reading, because I'm in the process of editing things, I'm reading a lot of my own work and not having a good time.
Not having a good time.
So we're gonna come back. We're gonna jump around for a second because we segued into this. When it comes to the world of writing, what would you say your writing process is? Everyone wants to go first. Like,
My process is weird.
No, processes are always weird. Yeah, right. Everybody has a weird process.
So the reason I ask is there a concept of structure in your process? Or are you more of a unstructured, I'm going to write and then fix things as I go?
Jada, you want to go first or do you want me to jump in?
Sure, only because in Wilkes they make us talk about this every semester so far. It's kind of annoying because I've had classmates try to say, I try to replica. No, don't replica my style. I stay up till like 3 o'clock in the morning most nights. You can't hang. It's okay. Like most people can't hang, till 2 a.m. writing and then wake up at 5 to draft and fix everything. That's kind of like my time period. I'm getting better though. I've been trying to cut stuff and give myself time to sleep because I was running on like a caffeine high. But coming into this next semester, I've been like practicing more of trying to like not press myself to write, but not force myself to write either. So if I'm like in a mood and I have an idea, I'll write, but I also give myself an option of how to write. I feel like that's a big issue, is that you feel like you have to write the novel, not outline, because outlining is also part of the creative process. So I've been trying to really evaluate what my creative process is. So I use Final Draft for my screenwriting because it's the industry standard. So if I'm going to sell something, it has to be in there. They just updated, and now they have outlines, so I can outline anything. I can write a novel. I can literally do everything. So I tend to like bounce back and forth between like, let me do some outlining. Oh, okay, let me research, because I don't think this is realistic, especially when you do periodic. You do something that's like period essenced, where it's like, okay, it's in the 90s. Like nobody says fam in the 90s.
Right.
But you have to like create a list that's part of my draft process, where it's like, all right, these are my rules. But I'm also I'm a TV person, so TV people, we tend to have Bibles. So for at least my screenwriting, I create my Bible of like, these are like strict rules on one side of my outline, and then my story poetry, I just word vomit. Sarah follows me on Instagram. She sees when I put in my stories. I find some weird
It's
stuff,
so
and I'm
good.
just
It's
like,
so
I like
good.
this. I like that. Get on the back and ride with me. Let's sing together. I just find stuff like that, and I make my poems based off of those arts that I find. And that's basically my two processes, which are totally different, but they work.
That's that's so interesting because like going from more of like a structured, TV that's very structured and then just kind of like being able to work. I mean, I wonder if it's like sort of like your therapy, sort of like being able
Yeah.
to sort of like, all right, I could turn off all my rules and sort of like start and just write what I not write what I want because you can write what you want in structure,
Yeah.
but sort of
Yeah.
just like have it be more organic. That's interesting because my process is a little similar but different because right now I'm writing my memoir, and in the long and short of it, I lost my dad 5 years ago, and so I'm writing the memoir connected to him. So it's a very emotional process, and the process of getting to these points are like sometimes I'm like I don't know how I get there. Sometimes I mean I just started making a playlist for September. So like I'll listen to these songs over and over and over again so I can become desensitized to them. And then so when I decide to write, I'm not crying over the song. I'm like crying over what I'm writing. And then I'm like, okay, I can get over that. And then if I read my work at least 5 or 6 times or 7 or 8 or a dozen, it won't be as sad to me because it becomes a project. And I think that's how like what my process is right now in moving forward in this very emotional um, avenue where I'm going. Because when I was writing my first thesis, I know Jada was kind of there when I was writing my undergraduate thesis, and it was different. It was a very different process because I was writing poetry. I mean, yes, granted, it was an emotional process, but this is a very different um, avenue I'm going on and opening doors that I haven't opened either ever or in a very long time. So, kind of emotionally, psychologically, and mentally preparing myself for that I mean, that's the process before the words even hit the page. And like, that's cool. And having, like, I wish I could outline, but I can't outline because when I write some of these, like, I'll write these vignettes. That's kind of like my structure right now for my thesis. I'll write a vignette and I'm like, wow, this is gold. And then I'll go back and I'll look at it and I'm like, maybe this has like too much in it. So I'm trying to spread out the whole story. So that's sort of like my process now. Like, where do I start? And then right now, and even like drafting or even kind of preparing for it, I'm not going in order because I don't like following rules. I am very much a rule in life, in writing and everything. I'm like, I don't like you give me a rule. I'm like, I can go around. I'll make my own. After you. And so I'm kind of writing my book backwards. Like I'm writing things now in like the today, and then maybe later I'll write the stuff from when I was little. I don't really have like a structure, but the process of getting to the words on the page, I feel like for me is much more important. But I can go on like there's a whole pedagogical thing, which this could be a whole. This could just become
It's its
that.
own conversation. I feel like the
Oh yeah,
process is, and especially with COVID, because like usually at least at Wilkes, they put together not poetry, they put together playwriting and screenwriting because they're people consider them most similar. And then when you
right.
actually have to write the two, you go, these are completely different like forms
Oh
of
yeah,
writing. And it's like, yeah, well, one is in action, one is filmed action. You're filming the highest level and standard of that action. So if it's I slam the door angrily, like that's different. I'm gonna film you until you get it the best, as opposed to you're gonna go out there and do it your best in the moment so you can connect with your audience. And
right.
for the playwrights, they were all like, yeah, like we basically had no jobs at the beginning of COVID because I started school like in the winter. So it was like in the height of COVID coming, promising all that we're going to open back up in the spring. So a lot of the poets and the playwrights definitely both were like, yeah, we don't get a lot of work. So we definitely have to put more work into self-care to produce better work. And I think that's something really big that we discuss at Wilkes as a cohort is like you have to have self-care. So that's something that's why it becomes such a detailed conversation, is because there's a process outside of the writing process, because to write means you have to have a clear head to really connect with those emotions, because if you're foggy, it's not going to translate on paper. I definitely know how that feels to be foggy. I feel like I was foggy when you met me in undergrad. I had no idea what I really wanted, and kept getting like, no, you can't write that. You have to write this, and so you have to rethink your process and then figure out, okay, what do I want to write and how do I want to connect to that character and that process. Poetry makes me cry because I write a lot of poetry about my grandmother who passed when I was in college, so I can relate to like trying to like desensitize yourself from like I don't want to break down every time I like try to review this and build a set of poems from this one poem. So it becomes like a sticky situation. I mean, the process is, we're humans. It changes as we change and as our environment grows or it becomes smaller. It just all depends on what life has for us, and I feel like that's how we try to make our process.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. And no, I didn't think you were foggy. I just think you were just like learning. Absolutely. I mean, undergrad creative writing majors, I mean, I would say are a different species of people. I mean, I met Sam actually at Brookdale, and I was a creative writing major then, and he saw me in the beginning when I was baby 18, writing horrible love poems.
There's no such thing as a horrible love poem.
No.
Jada.
Oh no.
Jada.
There's worse than roses are red, violets are blue.
Yes.
I'm not going to say the rest because we make it fair.
Jada, let me explain. Am I allowed to bash Sarah here?
You can. Go ahead.
Because these poems were every bad love poem cliche, one after another, with no structure. Like they would just be like clumps of, our love was unique because our love felt like fingertips, every print touching my body different. Shut up, Sarah. Like they were bad. So I want to quickly keep this discussion in the realm of process, but kind of moving a little bit forward. I want us to talk about editing, because I think many people who work in writing find it to be the most frustrating part of it.
Yes.
What role do you think editing does play and should play in your writing? You're welcome, Sam. I saw that comment. You're welcome for that. What role should editing play?
Do you want me to go first? All right.
Go for it.
So, I mean, at least editing for me is very much, I mean, especially the fact, because I'm in Monmouth and we've been in COVID online for so long, the editing process is very difficult because you're not really in workshop settings. Like you get a Google Doc and then you have to write feedback and then you have to write a feedback letter and then that goes back to the writer, and it's just like you can't have a fluid conversation, and like that's hard. So I mean, I was friends with a lot of people in my creative writing classes, so I would call them on the phone like, can we talk about this, because like I can see your comments and I appreciate them. I said, but I want to know like how you felt in that sentence and like what was going on in your head. And then that helps me, especially when writing nonfiction, like what hits and what doesn't. So, I mean, I thank my mom and my aunts and Sam and like both Sams because I've read some probably the same essays over and over and over again. And I'm like, so what do you think of this? And they're like, it's good. I'm like, no. Like, what do you really think of this? And like, that for me is my editing process. And it's important because like, yeah, it may sound gold to you, but it may not sound gold to everybody else. I mean, I've talked to like Sam, and I'm like, what do you think of this? I'm like, I think this is like really good. And he's like, you're kind of like not even in your own writing. You're just kind of like on the sidelines talking about things. And I'm like, I didn't even know that. So
I'm not a nice person to send your stuff to.
No, but it's good because it's constructive.
Yeah, I'm constructive, but like I'm like, hey, what if we do this but better?
Do better. That's do better. That's what you say.
Yeah. And I think that's one of the, I'll let Jada answer before I give my 2 cents.
Oh, editing's weird. I traditionally, so I have 2 different editing styles. For my poetry, I have a very weird way. And I constructed this over the course of having a poetry class and feeling like I wasn't seeing stuff off the first read, and I wanted to basically put the poem freshly back in my head. So instead of saying it out loud, I say it out loud and I write it. So, like, when we were kids and we get in trouble, we'd have to write the same thing 100 times. I basically do that with my poems. And I keep reading it and I keep trying to figure out, okay, what if do I want to change this? And I'll, like, if I have a line where I feel like I thought of it a different way while I'm doing that line by line rewrite, I'll put it on the side and then I'll test it. So I'll fill out both sides and then compare them and be like, okay, what works best? And sometimes when I get to a point where I'm like, I think I like this, I think that I'm confident, I'll just flash send it to 2 friends, 2 different friends who have 2 different personalities, just to get like a feel. But my poetry, like I said, I do totally different. Even if it's like a 3-line poem, like I'll sit there and literally write those 3 lines 70 times if I have to, until I feel like I have said what I feel like I have to say and I'm confident. I have longer pieces, but my poetry, it just works that way for me. I tend not to share that as much with people because it's like a 50-50. I've gotten like, you sound really good in, like, when you go to an event, and then I'll submit it and they'll be like, no, you don't fit our aesthetic for this magazine. So for those poems, I tend to like hold them, and like if I love them, I love them. If I don't, I share them. But that's how I do poetry. Screenwriting's its own beast because I may have a 10-page script, and then there's other times, like for instance, right now I'm trying to prep my script I basically used to get into grad school. It's two episodes, so it's the first episode and the second episode, so there's 60 pages each. It's hard to get anybody to read 60 pages of film, especially because they're not used to that structure. So they're reading and they're like, Jade, is it supposed to say this? Is it like they don't know the tricks like I know? Like if I wanted to do a conversation of me and Sarah on the phone, I can split panel my script to have Sarah on one side and me on the other side, instead of being like Sarah and then break back into me and then go back and forth. That would take longer. The camera will also separate us instead of putting us in the same screen at the same time as I'm thinking of it. So it becomes hard because now I can only tell my friends, like for me at least, when I send out my script, unless it's my professor, my mentor Ross, I only tell people focus on how you feel like the dialogue comes off, because for screenwriting, the most important thing that you can ever have is strong dialogue. If it doesn't make sense, like nobody's going to have a car accident and then just like walk away unless they're crazy, but you have to set up that they are crazy. So that's something you have to review to make sure you can't just have a baseball in the room or somebody swings a bat, but you never had them have a bat for the first 10 minutes of the whole script. Like, where'd the bat come from? Like, that's always a question mark you get in screenwriting. It's like, you have to make sure all your Easter eggs had a basket before they got dropped into your script. So those are 2 different styles. I typically don't have a lot of people, unfortunately, review my scripts because of these issues. Because it's just different. Like, you might as well hold on to it, just film it for free by yourself. And then if people love it, they love it. If they don't, they don't, And that's my process. I wish I was able to love fiction and nonfiction, because it is easier to get reviews on that. Screenwriting is horrible because most people have no understanding of what it is. They don't know what they're looking at. They don't know what they should be focusing on. So they'll tell you it's great because they're visualizing it, but it's like, this is not going to be the final copy. So you have to always think, okay, what is going to stay and what isn't, and go from there. But that's my editing process. Screenwriting, I'll do the same actually that I do with poetry. I actually thinking about it, because my current script I'm working on, I have 3 10-minute starts. So I started it off 3 different ways and then went with the one that I felt like caused the most conflict. And then I sent that to my mentor. And now I'm going over like the whole 70s thing, because I wasn't born in the 70s. I have no idea what the 70s was like. So that's a part of my editing process too, is adding in more of that humanistic element to make it come off more realistic when you see it in real time. But that's most of my process currently.
That's I really I find both of these really interesting because I don't know why I have this weird amalgamation um, that makes me laugh. So like with poems, I'll just write them and just edit as I go and be the worst, and then call someone with my first draft and be like, I made a thing. Like I usually will call Sarah and be like, I made a thing. And then Sarah will be like, it's good. I go, I edited it. You said it was your first draft. It is. Um, and it's annoying for a lot of people anytime I call them. Sarah can attest to this. But then on the opposite, I'm very much more like Sarah actually with my screenwriting, not because I think people know what I'm writing. I'll call them with just the idea. Like, here is my idea. Here's everything that I've put together. Is it as dumb as I think it is? Would people
Yes.
like this?
No,
Um,
I'm kidding.
well, no, because like I come up with like really weird ideas, and I want. This is gonna sound very weird because Jade, I feel like you don't know me as a human. I do a lot of like comedy scripts, and so when I say something seems dumb, in my mind, it's like the exact aesthetic of weird, surrealist comedy that I want. I'm like, is this a dumb idea? And they'll be like, no, it's fine. I'm like, you sure? Because it feels like it's really stupid. And I'll do that. And in doing so, I will literally talk through the entire script with like 18 different people before I even start writing it. And then I have like one or two people who went to school for screenwriting. I'm like, hey friends, is my formatting acceptable? And then they go, no, which is heartbreaking. But I think it's nice to have a community for either in any capacity. Also, I strongly relate to writing something you're very proud of, sending it to a magazine, and going, "No thanks. This is nice, but no thanks."
It's the struggle, right?
It
89 no's and that one yes. It's like, I guess it was worth it.
was
I just like
it?
don't send my stuff out. I mean, I thankfully, like I would thank everyone in the world. I've only sent my stuff out to 2 places, and I've got them published in both places. So I'm like, okay, this is cool. I've only had like one reject, so I'm like, all right, maybe I shouldn't like get used to this because this isn't gonna happen like forever.
So
I did
Yeah.
have a sorry, Sam. I didn't mean to like cut you off, but I wanted to ask Jada about something. In terms of like since you're doing the 70s vibe, I'm really curious of like what your process when it comes to research is. Because my process for research is obviously going to be very different, and I'm curious what your research process is when kind of developing a time period where like you weren't born in the 70s. So like how do you like kind of talk like that, and like how do you feel comfortable being in that time period even though you've never been in that time period?
So I have a couple of different components that I've done. They used to be up on my computer, but my computer started crashing because I had like 8 different basically web browsers open with like 20 different tabs each. So I crashed my computer a couple of times. So I'm keeping it very simple nowadays. So it doesn't take all my scripts out. But my process for this movie has been it's a TV show. So I'm glad I'm only sticking one. My goal is to keep one season in the 70s. He's a vampire, so he goes to sleep and wakes up in the 80s would be the goal. So kind of jumps into another period of time, and it's based in Miami. And I did Miami because Miami, if you guys don't know, Miami had a big cocaine rush and Hispanic rush in the 70s. So majority of businesses actually we know today in Miami were somehow funded by some kind of cocaine, whether it was completely indirectly, meaning that they're a vendor, like they were like an investor for your casino, Sarah, and you had no idea. I had $1 million because I'm coke dealer, or they were openly a coke dealer and they bought a casino or a hotel, because I don't think casinos are legal in Miami, and they would build it. So most of Miami's nightlife is actually thankful for all the cocaine that was pumped through the city between
Wow.
Colombians and Cubans. So that's how we have most of Miami right now, is because of that. They
That's
brought in
cool.
like millions of dollars just off of sales of drugs. So that was one part, was having to understand, okay, what are the key elements of the city? I picked Miami because it is one of the easiest 70 cities next to New York, but New York becomes complicated because New York itself has a lot of issues. I wanted to go somewhere where it's like the outside issues won't affect the characters as much. Like I can pick and choose. Because that's another issue. If you choose Alabama in the South before the Jim Crow's laws got taken down, you're gonna have so much buffer because you still have to bring that out. Like you can't have it in the South and not talk about those issues.
Right.
So I first did that. I had to definitely understand, okay, where do I want to take place? California, the South, East Coast, South, going mid-South, meaning Texas. So I did that first. Once I kind of understanding of what happened in the 70s for each of those cities, I went, okay, that's my city. Researched that city extensively for the 70s. And then the last thing I've been doing lately is I've been trying to find videos that show human contact in the 70s, because my first 10 pages that I pumped out for my mentor, he felt like I wasn't understanding human touch from the 70s, which was much more touchy. That's why I said a lot of the issues we see today with our governors are because they were raised in a time period where this wasn't a problem. So we get mad, but it's kind of like you can't be super mad at any of our politicians, celebrities that are older. They have no understanding of what the difference is. Like we don't know what happened in the 70s. They really can't connect with us in the 2000s. So trying to understand the 70s, I feel like is the reverse, because you would never expect that it's like really touchy. So that's something I'm having to learn, is like they gesture each other differently. Like nobody says, well, they use peace, but nobody was doing like some of the gestures I feel like we have. Like I said, fam, can't use that. So that means I had to write a list of all the words I can't use. I had to get used to words. Like I have a list of words in my outline that are basically catchphrases. So they had all their terms for weed. I had to do all the drugs, obviously, because it's Miami. So you got to imagine any party you go to in Miami, there are every drug on the planet there. I had to research every classification of human being. So yuppies, hippies, conservatives. I had to make sure I knew everybody, had every description of what they look like. Because if I was going to draft a character and felt like they were close to that, I had to make sure they come really close, because that way, if it gets produced, if HBO says, hey, we want to do this, they know how to dress that character. That actor knows, okay, this is who I am and this is what kind of laws I have to follow as that character to perpetuate that on the camera. So my research is usually like a hit or a miss. I try to get more of my research from visually seeing the 70s, but I'm not gonna lie, 70s movies, it's weird. I feel like you don't get as much of a 70s vibe from a movie in the 70s as opposed to a movie already like mine's made about the 70s but outside of the 70s. So I use Google. Like I'll be honest, they had us use a bunch of academic softwares. I use Google. I have a question, I Google it, and I take notes. But I want to say I have a lot of research. Even my scripts before that were based in like it was a script about like strippers. I had to go to a strip club and sit and really see how they interact with each other. I talked to one. I asked her what her life's been like, and I asked. I said, "How are the bouncers? What's it like behind the scene? Are you guys catty?" And that was one part. And then obviously Reddit is like a shit ton of stuff on Reddit from what people have done. But I want to say screenwriting, you either are really on the money, like you have to be on that dot, or you're off and they're going to tell you this doesn't work. You have to rewrite the whole thing. And that's kind of how screenwriting is. That's why it's annoying. But that's my process. I spend a lot of time staying up late, just researching to make sure this sounds like it's what it is and doesn't sound like I made it up. So
cool. I've been doing a lot of academic writing and doing research on that side of the world. And I feel like every academic paper I've been writing is sort of like my preparation for this manuscript. Like I did one essay where it was all about like fatherhood in the 20th century, looking at like 3 different poems, and they were all talking about like their, you know, fatherhood towards like a daughter versus fatherhood towards like a son. And I'm like, okay, like that's cool. I'm like, but how do I integrate that into my own world? Because I'm pretty much writing. I'm writing about me and my childhood, and so, I mean, my research is sort of looking at pictures and looking at, you know, interviewing people. I haven't really done that yet. I'm sort of like using everything that I have, and then gonna move on and like talk to other people. But I was gonna ask you too about, you know, because you picked Miami, like have you been there? Like I know for me especially, there are places that I'm writing about that I physically have been. Like I wrote about a park, and I've been there multiple times, and so it's easy to write about a place you've been versus a place you've never been. So like have you been there? Like why did you, I mean, I know why you picked Miami, but like did you have this like emotional connection, or is it like how do you use yourself in the writing even though you've never been or you weren't in the 70s? So how do you kind of put yourself in your world, in that world?
So I make this joke all the time when I go to residency. It's like I'm a crazy person who goes to my basement and I'll draft a fake script for myself to play as an actor to really understand. Okay, like I'll set up, like I'll literally have my TV upstairs. I'll do my ocean wave sounds to like channel I'm in Miami.
Oh, how
I
funny.
I like I if I really can't do it, of course there are herbs that I keep in my basement to make myself lucid enough to really try and do it. Because that's the ultimate goal for me, is like to be able to get in the headspace.
Yeah.
So if I have to walk around and my mom has to go, "Are you talking to yourself?" I am fine with that. That means that I have a general idea of what my because dialogue is so important in a script. If you can't get your dialogue down, like that's the main part. Like everything else you can fix. You can fix, if I'm going to write this conversation, I can fix how we're sitting, action. I can't fix the dialogue. You know,
Right.
dialogue's going to kill a script if it's terrible dialogue. So I play pretend and I act as one of my characters to try to, like, even the main character, Brady, who's from my Vampire Blues script, I'll pretend to be him, which is hard because I'm a woman. So it's weird getting the headspace of a man in the 70s, especially in the 70s in Miami with all the drugs. I'm pretty sure you guys heard about that black serial killer that's like the most prolific. He was running rampant in Miami. I have to tie him into my story, which is a constant reminder on my outlines, is tie him in the story, tie him in the story. So I make people feel like they're really there. But I have never been to Miami. I just always assume from all the pictures of everybody, because I'm pretty sure all of us have seen people who've traveled to better places than Jersey. I know, unfortunately, I was not one of those lucky people, but I literally take that and I'm like, huh, like, just think, you know, all those times we went to Asbury Park, but not Asbury, this.
Right.
Just think of it in reality. So that's kind of how I'm a crazy person. Like, I'll meditate and zen out until I can feel like I can really connect and really visualize. But that's like my process. I always tell people that's like the one thing I'll say I don't think a lot of people can replica, because you have to really be very comfortable with, you know, coming out of your own personality and playing another
Yeah.
character. Like, and a lot of writers, we're not actors. A lot of us are just writers.
No.
We write. Most of us have no idea what acting takes. And I want to say I've never actually acted, but I like to say if I write a script, I rather sit and play all my characters before I sit and get 6 people to play all the characters. I have to have a feel to really understand, okay, who are my characters? Because your relationship with the characters first, and then your audience second, because your characters tell a story through, even if it's you, like Sarah, for you writing your own memoirs, you're telling your own story through your own mouth. So you have to have a great relationship with yourself and really hear
Yeah.
yourself and be like, okay, this is what I'm trying to say. No, I'm not trying to say that. I try to do memoirs. I don't think I'm at a place in my life to really sit down and be able to like hash out all my shit. So I give you props for that. It's like memoirs.
It's
It's
hard.
not easy. Yeah, it's not. I
Oh
wrote
no.
one poem about one thing, and I was just like, as I'm getting critiques, I'm like, I can't do this, and I'm just like, I couldn't do it. So yeah, it's hard.
Thank you. It is. I mean, the journey of kind of getting to this point. I mean, if you talk to any of my family or my friends, it's like, like Sarah's going through some, like, I always call myself like I'm Sarah 2.1. Like I'm just going through a lot of transitions right now. And it's like trying to understand yourself while trying to go back in time and trying to, balance, like, where am I at as the narrator in the story? Like that's hard. But I'll get there. I think. I hope. I'm hoping. So where are we at, Sam?
So we've got about 12 minutes or so left. And this question that we have on here is kind of connected a bit more towards your writing, Sarah, and I don't know all that much, but there's a discussion that has come up a couple times regarding trauma, emotional depth, kind of pulling from where you come from. And so, do you think there's a connection between trauma and creativity? Do you think that sometimes you have to go to a place that hurts to find something good?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, it's a process to get there, and then it's like ripping off a band-aid. I feel like for me, it's like you have to rip it off and then it bleeds, and then you're like, you notice that it's bleeding, and then you're like, okay, it's going to clot eventually, but in that time where it's bleeding, you're like, all right, this is where you're the right about the pain. And I think for me, it kind of, I get very wrapped up in my own kind of like understanding what trauma is. And I mean, Jada, you've read my work in undergrad. I think I've always sort of had this underlying theme of trauma in my writing. And so, kind of honing in on my own personal trauma is a different animal. And I think that you have to get there in order for it to be genuine. Like, I can write about death all day long, but if I don't know the person who's dead, then it's not going to stick, at least in my world. Jada, I mean, in your world, it's different because all your characters are fictionalized, so it's different. And then that's a whole different kind of conversation talking about how do you mourn for characters that aren't real. I mean, we all have. I mean, I just read this book, and everybody's dying, and I'm feeling for them. So, kind of looking at trauma and seeing how much can you handle? I think that's what it is. How much pain can you handle until you're like, all right, I gotta close the computer. Like, I can't do this anymore. I mean, I've done that where I'm like, I'm halfway through a personal essay and I'm like, I can't do this. Like, this is way too much right now. And like, I'm like, I gotta go have a drink. Or I'll go for a walk, or I'll go do something. But like, always. Actually, Jada, I have graduated to the twist bottle, so it's okay.
Okay.
Grad school, we have to step up the game. But yeah, I mean, definitely. To answer your question, Sam, you have to kind of tap into a different whole world, and kind of see like how much can I handle. And I think for me too, I don't mean to drag this answer on. I don't think about the person reading it. I think more about me. Like, I'm not writing for other people. I'm writing for myself. And if I can handle that, then I hope that other people can. And some people can, some people can't. But I'm going to give you as much trauma as I can physically and emotionally handle in my writing.
Okay.
Cool.
That's a good answer. Jada, what do you think?
So I'm not the person who sings in the shower. I'm the person who I feel like I write about a character, and I'll force myself to lucid. I practiced lucid dreaming since I was like in high school, so I can lucid dream a story if I need to. So it doesn't always work. Obviously, like I'm not rocket science at that. But sometimes I do get there and I am able to like meditate into my dream state and really try to visualize my stories. And I try to connect with emotions. Like I try to connect all my characters to emotions I have, because I feel like it makes it easier when I'm writing it to be more realistic. Like if I'm writing, like most of my characters, if I do create them with like any type of mental disorders, I connect because I myself have been diagnosed. I myself have gone to therapy. I know what it feels like to be falling apart. I know rock bottom to the high. I know all that, so I can write those characters very effectively. All women characters, for the most part, I write pretty effectively because I can connect really well to a female character and the different struggles we have. Because it's all counter. Like I feel like people are just counters of each other. Like one person's upset because she has bigger breasts. One person's upset because she has smaller. The goal is that you're upset because you don't feel perfection. So I feel like those key elements that people feel for certain emotions, I just try to key in. Like I mean, I've had characters that have been sitting in my draft book for probably since FDU, and if I was to play out a part of their script or even a poem, because I've drafted some poems in the voice of my characters to be able to, because that's something they've been like really big about at Wilkes, which I didn't realize how crazy it was to be a poet and a screenwriter. But I've always seen the conversation of words as poetry. Like everything I'm saying right now, I'm articulating, I'm trying to make it smooth to the ear so that my audience will hear it and really be able to tune in and connect. So I feel like everybody's a poet to a certain extent.
Absolutely.
But I definitely I find ways to connect with my characters, even if it's by force, just because I want to, like, one of my characters, it's a really big story, so I don't write about it that often because it takes a lot. Her biggest premise is that her one thing is she can't fit into any society. And then when she tries to have more of her kind, meaning reproduce, society tells her no. And the trauma of losing a child is what basically pushes her over into oblivion of self, meaning that she'll do anything, destroy the whole her basically she does destroy her whole universe. But trying to connect, when I wrote that, I had to write that short scene for a playwriting exercise with our ex director at Wilkes, from one of my classes. And when I was writing, like, I was teary because it's hard to think that you don't fit in with anybody else, and then somebody takes away the one person that you feel like you fit in. I connected with that from being African American and being put in situations where I can literally not connect with anybody in that room. Nobody understands why I'm saying these words. Nobody understands, like, it's like, how'd your hair change from yesterday to today? Like, none of your business. Leave me alone. So I really take stupid situations that I feel like would cause you to feel alienation, because alienation and isolation and aloneness are very similar. They're all similar emotions that you feel, they tie together. So I want to say with screenwriting, like, I try to create characters that, like, even the bad guy, like, I try to create all my characters with a little bit of empathy, unless they're like really, really bad people. Then it's like, all right, like, I don't really give a shit what happens to you. I don't like, the goal is to make you seem as big of a dickhead as possible. And then my main character's always got to have that counter where it's like, they call it saving the cat, and I'm pretty sure Sam's heard this, saving the cat, where it's kind of like you want them to feel something for that character, even if they're an asshole. You got to feel something for that asshole. So when you stick him up the tree, the audience is like, come on, take him down, he can't be up there. Somebody has to go and save the freaking cat, which is your main character. I tend to get very close because I want all my main characters to be lovable people. Even if you hate them, you love to hate them. Maybe it's because I watched many years of WWE, and WWE loves to do that with their characters, which is
Yes.
make you love them and then make you hate them and then make you love them again. And it's like,
Turn
stop
heel.
playing. Yeah, man, like, stop playing with my emotions. So I feel like years and years of watching a lot of TV where it's that transition where you try to connect with characters because you have to. I feel like as a screenwriter, to be effective, you have to pretend they're real people. Like, you don't believe in
Absolutely.
vampires, you can't write a vampire story. Like, that makes no sense. You can never write True Blood if you don't believe in vampires. You have to believe in them to really put emotions into those characters. So I want to say that's like the tricky part with like screenwriting, is that you can write a character that, like, there's some people who have scripts they'll never finish because they get so close to the character, they just never let themselves release and write. And so now it's like,
Yeah.
they just don't write because they can't connect. So I want to say that's like my process. Again, I'm a crazy person who has plenty of trees in my basement. So that's my night hour session before I write. I watch something, I zen out, I decide I usually do like a little comedy, like Dave Chappelle, which has been on everywhere. I love it. And then like I try to get into it by watching something very 70s, and then I'll be like, okay, I'm like 70s, I'm a hippie, I'm writing about other hippies and like hippie shit and doing weird stuff. I listen to the song my classmate sent me, which makes me cry because it's like such a sad song, and I've listened to it so many times thinking of my character's story. It'll make me cry because I know at the end like I'm gonna kill him, but that's seasons down the road. So for right now, he's alive, but in my head, he's already dead, unfortunately. So
Spoilers.
that's my emotional trauma. I think all writers we either have depression, anxiety, some kind
All
of
the
there's
above.
something not right with us in the head. We have all of the above. We just know how to function better than most because we have the power of words. So we kind of just write everything instead of just dealing with the bullshit that we create in our heads. But that's okay. You know, life goes on.
Yes.
We'll all be famous big time writers, and when we're rich, then we can afford to go to therapy. It's always my train record. Become rich enough to afford to go to therapy of all levels.
Oh,
Shopping,
that's funny.
counseling, vacation therapy. I want
I'm
it
good
all.
with that. I'm down with the vacation
Like
therapy. I'm
all of
all
it.
about that.
Tattoo therapy, times 1,000. But that's my process for my trauma and my emotions with my characters.
Okay, I feel like that's a really like nice. I'm not a happy, but like a strong place to end on. We'll end with the last kind of question of advice for someone just kind of getting involved in writing, whether it is screenwriting, poetry, fiction, nonfiction, interpretive dance. I don't know if any of us can speak to that as a
No,
writer.
definitely. I mean, if you want to research
Mhm.
interpretive dance.
Yeah.
But but any advice that stands out?
I'll go first if that's okay with you, Jada, because it's in my
Okay.
head. So advice. I always say try everything. That's for me a big deal. I try like Jada met me as a poet. I was a poet for 10 years. Then I dabbled in fiction for a very brief time. Realized that it's not for me. Then I was like, why am I writing all of my characters that are me? I'm like, oh wait, that's nonfiction. So then I was like, wait, okay, now this is the genre that I feel comfortable in. And then it kind of just, but it's a fluid thing. It's an organic thing. Like I can go write a poem. And maybe that's like Jada, like that's part of the process. Like, but yeah, understanding what your process is, I think, is my biggest advice. Being mindful of what you're doing during the before and during your writing. If you have to make a playlist, like I do, of all of like I mean, right now I have like every single dad song in the entire history of the world, and any recommendations would be appreciative because I'm running out. Or you have to take a walk or have a journal. Like I journal. I have a Google Doc on my computer where it just says thesis journal, and I just write it there first, and then I won't put it in the next journal or the other second drafts until I kind of get my ideas on the page. So this is kind of just like I'll write like a sentence. I'm like, this to be continued, next line, other things. So understanding what your process is, I think, is for me the biggest advice, and knowing what you're doing and making it even a journal about your process. That would be mine. But yeah.
Okay. Jada,
There
you
we
have
go.
20 seconds because
I have 20 seconds. Okay.
15.
So my biggest advice is I want to say be persistent, and find everybody's has a unique way to write. For instance, for me, people try to replicate my way and then go, I don't get why it doesn't work for me. So
Hold on 1 second.
hi, peoples.
Hold on.
Where are we
Okay.
at?
Okay. Hello.
Hey.
Hi.
Okay. Jada, you can continue. It won't be on Instagram.
Go ahead.
So for me, at least, my biggest advice is to find your path to being a writer. You cannot copy. I feel like there is a buttload of books out there that try to tell you how to be a writer. Everybody's writing style is way too different. Everybody's way of writing, because we all live different schedules. Sarah may work, 7 to 3, which gives her hella more hours than me working 9 to 5 to write. So of course we're going to have two different writing styles. You just have to find what works with you and take a break. Be as fast as you want. I think like that slow and steady doesn't work for me. And you always get forced, take your time. It's okay. Like, no, I want to be a famous writer like next week, not 80 years from now. I don't want to be 50 when I become a big time writer. I want to be like 30s, 40s, actually enjoy that moment, be able to teach somebody that's not too far away from me, but like right there, like, be a professor and be able to connect, not feel like I'm 70 and they're 20 and we don't connect because I'm so out of touch. So you have to find what's unique for you. And if you're going to be different, just be different. Like, who cares? Who gives a fuck? We're all unique people. I think as writers, there is no right answer. There's only being better at what you do. So you just have to set a bar and keep resetting it until you get to the best. But don't look at, I don't look at Sarah and go, I'm not writing Sarah's style. Like, Sarah has her style and I have my style. Of course, we can always collaborate and bring them together. But we're two unique writers. I'm pretty sure me and Sam, even being both screenwriters, have two different styles of screenwriting. It has nothing to do with education. It's just what we creatively think when it comes to art. So being uniquely you and confident about it would be my advice, because there are a lot of writers who stop being writers because they lose that confidence and they feel like, I have to be Stephen King. Like, no, you don't. You don't have to be Stephen King. He's a rare occasion. Like, he doesn't even happen anymore for a lot of us. So that's my advice. Just, you got to stick it out and be you. Don't let people kind of make you change. I'm still a vampire writer, although they told me stop writing vampires when I was an undergrad. I continue to write them because I love vampires. And
you do you, girl.
Yeah, like, do you, boo? You gotta do you. That's the best advice I have. Do you. Write every day as much as possible. And when you have to, like, don't feel like you have to set up a rigorous schedule, because that's another issue. So just be fluid. I want to say be like the ocean. Don't be like concrete where you kind of settle. You have to flow. But yeah, that's my advice. That's my last advice.
It's all about the motion of the ocean.
Yeah, you gotta just like swim like a fish. You gotta swim. You gotta do that.
All right. So Sarah and Jada, thank you so much for talking about your process, about how writing is between these very different genres. Thank you again, Jada.
Thank you, Sam.
Yeah, right.
For getting us all together.
Yeah. Thanks, Sarah, for inviting me. Thanks, Sam, for putting it
absolutely. It was so good to see you again.
I know. We have to do stuff. I told you. I think we graduate around the same time. So
yeah.
You got to catch me before my graduation, because I swear, once I'm out of Jersey before I'm 30, that's my goal. Can't take it. But thank you guys.
All right. Goodbye, everyone. Please follow us for more events at Second Renaissance Arts.
2 weeks.
In 2 weeks, we have our next program with Sarah. It is the larger, bigger writers in education panel with all sorts of cool, groovy people. Maybe Jada comes back for it. Who knows?
Yeah, you want Jada? You're more than welcome.
Yeah, Jada.
Let me know. Just let me know.
And then tomorrow we have our Artist of the Month podcast, Balcony Chats, with our special guest, Damien Rucci, who is actually going to be going on a Midwest tour in like a week and a half. So glad we caught him when. No, it's like in a week. We'll talk about it tomorrow. Tune in tomorrow if you want to learn about Damien Rucci and his tour. Thank you, Jada. Thank you, Sarah, and we will see you later.